So many brands come out with boring color stories. Neutrals, which I love and I'm not complaining about. Monochromatic palettes. Rainbow palettes. Things we've seen done a million times over. But when a brand comes out with an interesting color story, one that like takes your breath away, is like a work of art, that is something to celebrate in my opinion. And so I have 12 palettes I want to talk about that I feel like have interesting color stories. Color stories that when I first saw them, I was taken aback, intrigued even. Welcome if you are new here, my name is Rachel, and if you're not new here, thank you so much for coming back. We're going to talk about palettes that I think have interesting color stories. I did get this video idea from Heather Austin, and she got the idea from Angelica Nyqvist. I will link both of their channels down below. And I want to hear from you as I'm going through these palettes. What are some palettes you think have interesting color stories? If you don't think the ones I picked are interesting, that is totally okay. It is in the eye of the beholder. It's an opinion thing, so I'm totally okay if you don't agree with me. But let me know down in the comments which ones you think are interesting. The first one I want to talk about, the It's Freakin' Bats palette by Shroud and Batty Bean. I think this is a beautifully done, mostly cool tone palette that it's not just like grays and taupes and blacks. There's a little bit of color infused in here, muted and moody. I think it was a Halloween release, but this is a palette that I feel like I could use anytime during the year. It's not like oranges and blacks, right? You still have that little bit of fall grunginess. You have that spring color in there. This is a gorgeous palette. I remember when I first saw it, I didn't pick it up right away. And then getting it in person, I think it looks even more beautiful. Now, I'm not talking necessarily about formula today, like that's not really what's determining what makes this video, but I will say the formula is also beautiful. I think this is a gorgeous, grungy, cool tone color story that's still got some color that would appeal to even a warm tone lover like me. This next palette is the palette that I voted the best palette that came out last year, and I remember as soon as the pictures dropped, I was like, yep, sign me up. And that's how you know it is exclusively about color story at that point. This is the Natasha Denona My Dream palette. I think this is so beautiful. Oh, look, just look at it. Would you look at it?
Drill it.
Would you just look at it?
Yeah.
I mean, really. I love that you've got variety. And that is one thing also that I love in a palette is variety. Can I get multiple different types of looks? Variety is the spice of life. I have said that before, and it is one of my life's mottos. I love that you get dark looks, you can get light looks, you can get cool tone looks, you can get warm tone looks, you can get neutral looks. You even have a multi-chrome in here. I think this is really dark and smoky and beautiful and a little bit more amped up for Natasha Denona. I think this is one of my favorite color stories I have in my collection. It's so me, and I'm just so drawn to purples and neutrals. They are like my favorites. And I don't think this is a boring neutral palette. I think it's got a little bit of dark sultriness infused in there. So I would definitely say this is an interesting color story in my opinion. Another interesting color story, especially for the brand, is the Star Wars palette from Colourpop. Another one of my favorite palettes that I tried last year. We're not talking about packaging, but packaging is also beautiful. I love when brands collab with an IP and really nail the color story. I feel like they really did a good job of putting the colors from the movie poster into a palette and still making it wearable, still making it make sense in eyeshadow form. And I feel like they really did that with this. It truly does reflect this picture up here, as you can see. I think that this is unique color story for the brand especially. They are more obviously trying to market to the masses because they are a very, very popular, affordable makeup brand. But I like that they kind of did something different here. You obviously can do a neutral look with this, but you've got blues, you've got reds, you've got cool tones, you've got neutrals. You've got these two Super Shock marble shades, which are really sparkly and really pretty. The shimmers in this are gorgeous. And I just remember seeing this and thinking, wow, I love how they did this and how they just took a little bit of a chance. And I think they did a beautiful job. You know, to me, I love neutrals. Like I've already said 1,000 times, you guys are sick of it. But if I'm gonna wear color, like my two favorite colors are purple and green. So, Beaute Aura palette. I think this is gorgeous. Again, when I first saw this dropped with their other palette that was released with this is the one I was drawn to the most. And when I looked at it, I thought, oh, it's a purple palette and a green palette. But if you look a little closer, you can see that you've got even more variety than you think. You have this champagne, which is really beautiful and can go with anything. You have more like pinks that lean more fuchsia. You have cool tone purples. You have this shimmer here, Sunburst, which is almost like a gold with a green undertone. There are little nuances and little undertones in here that are somewhat hidden beyond your first look at the palette. I have to pull this out again and use it again, but this color story to me is really beautiful. And one that I find I would want to reach for over and over again. This is another one from Colourpop that when they first released the pictures of it, I audibly gasped. And it's the Aurora Struck palette from Colourpop, which I already said. I think they went out on a limb, did something a little different here, and I love that. I love that. Usually with their mega palettes, they tend to lean a little more neutral, which is fine, but I love that they did this Aurora Borealis theme, and they did a great job of reflecting that on the inside. You've got all these beautiful spring tones, but also some darker smoky tones as well. Just beautiful to look at, in all honesty. Now, unlike the Aura palette from Ace Beaute, these are not colors I typically am going to reach for on a daily basis, but I can absolutely appreciate the color story for what it is. It's just so beautiful to look at. It's like looking up at the Northern Lights. Not that I know what that's like, because I haven't seen them in person, but I've seen pictures. This is one of their more unique color stories, in my opinion. The next palette I want to talk about is the Heather Austin palette from Adept Cosmetics in collaboration with Heather Austin, obviously. I think this is such a beautifully done palette. Now, again, I'm not talking about the formulas, but formulas are great as well. I really love her color choices here. You've really got a shimmer shade for any look that you may want to do. Something more green, something more purple pink, something more warm tone, something more neutral, something a little more icy. There is really a blue here as well. There is really a lid shade for any look that you may want, and they're multi-dimensional. They're just gorgeously sparkly, beautiful shades. And I also really like the formats that she put in there. They're all very different, but somehow they work together as well. I think the color story on this is really beautiful. It's not a rainbow palette, but you still get a ton of variety. You've got grunginess to it, but you've also got light and bright. So I think this is a really interesting color story and a great array of shimmer shades in here. I love Halloween. It is my favorite holiday, okay? So whenever a Halloween palette is done in an interesting way, I'm here for it. And I think the Spooked palette from Gourmand Girls and Doodles by the Bunny is definitely an interesting and different Halloween release. Now you've got your oranges and your blacks like you would kind of expect, but you've really got a lot of pops of colors that I think of when I think of Halloween, but not like immediately off the bat. But I look at this and I think, ooh, we've got white like a ghost. We've got green like Frankenstein. We've got purples like the pictures of bats, you know, cartoons. This is like a cartoony Halloween palette in my opinion, but I love that because you can still get brightness if that's what you like. It's not all dark and moody. And of course there are neutrals in here, which I love. And the 3 multi-chromes in here are just stunning. And they're neutrals, which I love because they're neutrals, but they're amped up neutrals. They're not boring neutrals, and I can appreciate that a lot. And of course, Doodles by the Bunny is amazing. I will link her Instagram down below. She creates such beautiful color stories. I mean, that's her thing. She knows what she's doing. And so she did it with this. They did a great job with the color story. Another absolutely beautiful color story, I think, is this one, the Wicked Widow Beauty Scissorhands 2 palette. I just want to swim in this. Like, it truly reminds me of like a wintry dream, but also like aquatic. Because you've got these blues and greens. These shimmers are multi-dimensional. They've got different shifts to them. They're So, so beautiful. I just want to bathe. I want to bathe in these colors. The depth is so stunning. The undertones are so stunning. Now, again, am I going to reach for a palette like this all the time? Probably not. But if I do want to reach for these tones, I think they all pair together so well, and there is variety in this as well. I want to swim in these. That's all I can say. Heather did mention this palette in her video, but I would have to agree with her. I think Nomad Cosmetics' most interesting color story of the ones I have is the Fête de Provence palette. Again, when they first showed the color story of this on Instagram, I was honestly blown away. I think it is so beautiful and so unique. I don't really have another palette that has this color story. It's giving me spring vibes, light and bright, but also deep and smoky as well. You've got these warmer pinks and reds. You've got these cooler purples and blues. And then you have this bright sunny column in the middle. I just think it's so, so beautiful to look at. And I actually really like using these tones on my eyes. It's like spring flowers, right? And then this is like spring when it's raining, where there's still that like color in there, but it's a little more drab in a good way. I think they did a beautiful job on this color story. It is honestly the most interesting and the most eye-pleasing one that I feel like they've done. I think it's really stunning. Blend Bunny, which is one of my favorite brands. They do a lot of super colorful palettes, and I love those palettes. I don't know that they're super unique in my opinion, but I feel like this one, which is their most neutral palette, is very unique. So this is the All Done Up palette. This is the smallest palette that she's created, which I also love. When you first look at this, you think, oh, it's like a neutral palette. But upon closer inspection, it's not just a neutral palette. You've really got colorful neutrals. You've got more than just browns. You have this true like cool tone gray, black, white column. This actually is quite green on the eyes. Then you have your yellowy mustards. Then you have your pinky reds. And then you have your true brown neutrals. So honestly, it is a neutral palette, but there's a little bit more color in here than you would expect. It's colorful enough for a color lover to appreciate, but toned down and neutral enough that a neutral lover would be comfortable wearing these. You know what I mean? It's a very interesting neutral palette. Another one that I think the color story is just really beautiful is the Cosmic Brushes Serenity palette. I also love when brands really do match their cover to what's inside. I can really appreciate that. It gives you that vibe just even looking at the cover. You know what you're gonna get on the inside. And so here is the inside. Oh, now again, I'm not really gonna reach for these colors all the time, but I can absolutely appreciate how absolutely beautiful this color story is. It gives me like tie-dye vibes. Like I want a tie-dye shirt with these colors. They're bright and vibrant, but you've also got dark and smoky. You've got light to deep, and the formula is great. I know we're not going there, but it is. I'm so excited to get their new palette. I think the new palette is also extremely beautiful and interesting. But this one, I remember thinking, wow, this is really, really beautiful. The colors work together really well. I love this shade Opal up here, this like iridescent shade, which is beautiful for the inner corner. You've got neutrals, you've got purples, you've got greens, you've got blues. Really beautiful, bright, vibrant, yet grungy as well. And this last palette is the first one I thought of when I wanted to do this video because, and I hate to rave about it because it's no longer available, but it's the Christmas Eve palette from Oden's Eye. Like I said, I'm not a cool tone person. I'm not even a blue person, but oh my goodness, this color story, it just calls to me. It just speaks to me on a different level. I think they did such a great job making a Christmas palette that doesn't look super Christmassy, yet still reflects that wintry dream. And the way these are on the eyes, I'm speechless. I wasn't gonna pick this up. And honestly, even when I looked at it, I thought, I mean, it's pretty, I like it. But when I saw people actually use it on the eyes, that's when I was like, okay, Okay, you've convinced me. So I think it's cool that a color story can actually be even better on the eyes. That's how I feel about this. Even just looking at it is beautiful, but when it's on the eyes, especially if I'm saying it from someone who really doesn't like these colors typically, it's a beautiful palette. Beautiful palette. You can't get it anymore, sorry, but I had to mention it. All right, and that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments which palettes you think are interesting in terms of their color story. Are there any palettes that when you first saw them, you were like transported into a dream just by looking at the color story, not knowing anything about the formula? Let me know down in the comments. I love hearing from you. And if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up. That helps me out a lot when you do that. And if you're not already subscribed to my channel, I would love it if you would consider subscribing before you leave. I do upload videos weekly, both beauty and fashion videos, and I would love to see you back on my channel again. I want to thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.